Hey y'all, it's your friendly neighborhood therapist, and today I want to talk a little bit about something that was trending on my timeline yesterday that I was trying to formulate what I wanted to say and I couldn't. And now I realize why I couldn't. So I don't know if it was on y'all timelines or not, but there was a church in Virginia in which a young woman, about 19 or 20 years old, stood in front of the congregation to confess her sin of being pregnant out of wedlock. Just off rip, my first thought, they still doing this. Like, this is so terrible. This is toxic theology. This is harmful. This is spiritual abuse. Like, all of that ran through my mind, right? But today, her mother made a statement, I guess, and stood behind the pastor and behind the church and their beliefs. And I'm not surprised by that at all. Not surprised at all. I'm never surprised when people choose their religion and their toxic beliefs over their own children. That's never shocking. But I figured we could have a little bit of a talk regarding religious trauma and spiritual abuse. And this is for twofold, two reasons. One, I myself have been affected by this personally. And two, I work with a lot of clients with religious trauma and spiritual abuse. It is something that I have always desired to work in because I know just how psychologically detrimental and how emotionally painful it can be. So, with that said, let's just do a little quick lesson. I got to get back in my mental health bag. I know y'all have seen the last couple of videos, and I've been more so talking about politics and things like that. But at the end of the day, everything connects to mental health anyway. But today I want to do an actual mental health lesson. So, let's break some things down, okay? So, what is spiritual abuse or religious trauma? The terms are used interchangeably. So, basic definition for spiritual abuse is when someone uses spiritual or religious beliefs to hurt, scare, or control you. Okay? To go a little bit more in depth, it is a distortion and exploitation of spiritual authority to manipulate, control, use, or harm others, mostly through shame and fear. I have long thought to myself that if we are given free will, then that means you cannot use fear to make someone believe. Fear actually removes free will. If I am making a choice out of fear, that is not free will. That is not in my right mind. That is a fear based decision. I am scared. So I am trying to save myself or survive. And if that's why I'm making the choice to believe, that's not belief. That's not faith. In this situation, I'm only going to say a few things about it because I honestly don't even want to harp on it. It is what it is. But I will say this for those of us who call ourselves advocates for those who are harmed or advocates for victims, we have to speak on this. We don't have to necessarily try to help or defend this particular family because they don't want it. The thing with indoctrination is it causes you to not even realize you are harmed or being harmed. You know, it's not harm to you. No different than people who grow up and say, well, I got beat as a child, but I turned out all right. It's the same thing. But on any note, my only real thing to add to this situation at that church is it has always boggled my mind that I've only ever seen women get brought in front of the congregation to confess this sin of getting pregnant out of wedlock. I've always asked, where's the man? Two people made this child out of wedlock. Where's the other half of this equation? Because I've never seen it. In all my 39 years of life, I have never seen them bring a man, father of the child, up to the front of the congregation. And that has always bothered me. And now that I am an adult and I'm older and I've experienced some things, it leads me to believe that for a lot of women, and in my case, black women, the church was your first abuser. Sorry. I know that might rub some people the wrong way, but it does. And that's ironic, seeing as how black women have specifically for the Black church, Black women have been the reason that the church still stands. So I don't understand. I've never understood. But yes, I do because of patriarchy and misogyny. It runs through the veins of Christianity and most religions, if we being honest. But anyway, back to this short lesson on religious trauma and spiritual abuse. So I pulled up some of my uh, researched information and I want to talk with y'all about it. I want to talk with y'all about it because I want everybody to be aware of the symptoms of this. So, first and foremost, let me reiterate that religious trauma, often referred to as spiritual abuse, encompasses a range of experiences that can result in psychological distress. These may include manipulation, rigid dogma, exclusivity, shaming, or various forms of control within a religious context. The effects of religious trauma can be long lasting, impacting individuals' self esteem, sense of identity, and overall well being. When I tell you that religious trauma and spiritual abuse is probably up there as one of the worst types of abuse, I know we consider emotional abuse and psychological abuse and physical abuse, and I honestly don't like ranking them against each other. But the reason spiritual abuse is so terrible is because it has you questioning the very core of who you are. It makes you question if God, whatever God you believe in, or creator, whatever, if that entity loves you, if you are worthy, if you are good enough. And to be told that you are never good enough is already a psychological problem. So, again, if you have experienced religious trauma, spiritual abuse, you may feel disconnected from your spirituality or have a distorted perception of your worthiness, as I just said. And these wounds can affect various aspects of your life, including relationships, career choices, and your mental health. So, signs and symptoms of this. First, let me just say identifying religious trauma can be really challenging simply because it manifests in different ways, in a lot of different ways for each individual. However, these are the common signs and symptoms that may indicate its presence. Anxiety and depression. I know that's real, like basic, right? But most individuals, if not all, who have experienced religious trauma may struggle with anxiety and depression. They experience fear, guilt, shame related to their religious beliefs or spiritual experiences. And you know what's interesting with shame? It is very interesting that the introduction of shame for nearly all people comes from either their home, from parents or caregivers, or from their church. The two places where you should feel the most safe in life are the two places where shame begins. That's always been interesting as well. Other signs and symptoms, a loss of faith or questioning beliefs. So many people now are deconstructing because they were harmed by the church. And let's be really clear, the church has consistently been losing people. Like the numbers, people who go to church, people who identify as Christian, has drastically dwindled over time. And you want to ignore the why. This is a major reason why church hurt, religious trauma, spiritual abuse. This is a big reason why. So, yeah, again, many people started their deconstruction journey simply because they dealt with harm and trauma and abuse within their religion or within their spiritual faith. So you start to become disillusioned with the teachings and practices of your former religion. And once you start questioning things, I mean, hey, it changes a lot for a lot of people. And that's, let me be clear too, questioning. I grew up hearing often, never question God, right? And that somehow got twisted to never question your pastor, never question an elder, never question the teachings of the Bible, never question. God and all those entities are very different. Me questioning a man or a woman, no matter what their title in the faith, me questioning words from a book is very different from me questioning God. And I don't think people understand that. You get to question. You know the entities that tell you not to question. You know what those are called? Cults. Cults. If you get told it's a problem that you question things, you may be a part of a cult. And there are a lot of similarities between cults and religious beliefs, certain religious beliefs. in denominations and practices. Let's be really clear. The remaining signs and symptoms. Um, you have distrust and difficulty forming relationships. Because religious trauma can erode trust, it makes it challenging for individuals to form new relationships, especially relationships outside of their own belief system. Like it is very hard to build or connect or maintain relationships outside of people who believe exactly as you believe. You might struggle with feelings of betrayal and find it difficult to open up and trust others. Negative self image and low self esteem. So, this can deeply impact your self esteem and your self worth. You internalize negative messages and beliefs, leading to a diminished sense of self worth. You are literally told you are nothing more than rags. You are unworthy. You require grace and mercy because you are so unworthy. Like I remember hearing all these things myself. You are flawed. You are imperfect. Like we know that. Logically, we know we're not perfect, but you are worthless. You are sinful and terrible at your core and evil and innately evil and born into sin. All these things get internalized in people and it makes them look at themselves like, well, I ain't worth a damn. I'm nothing. That is psychologically harmful. That can break a person beyond repair. Like, I don't think people realize that. And then a final common symptom is fear of religious spaces or rituals. Individuals who have experienced religious trauma may develop a fear or aversion to religious spaces, rituals, or symbols. These triggers can evoke intense emotions and anxiety. So I'm going to tell you something. Transparency moment. When I saw that video, even though that never happened to me, I know that it happened to people that I know personally. And so when I saw that woman standing in front of that congregation to admit and confess her sin of becoming pregnant out of wedlock, I was triggered. I was immediately triggered. I immediately got pissed off. I was like, the fact that this is still happening and people are okay with it. Now, most people outside of that space are definitely not okay with it, or outside of the spaces that believe that way are definitely not okay with it. But there are a lot of people who are okay with it and who are teaching the next generations to be okay with this type of harm. And then you wonder why people are leaving in droves. People who grow up in it are leaving when they get older. And it's not one of those situations like the prodigal son where they come back either. They leaving because nobody wants to continue to be harmed. It is human nature to protect ourselves from harm. So after a while, it makes sense that somebody would say, I got to get out of this. I am being harmed. Interestingly enough, I saw an interview that Jamal Bryant did the other day, Pastor Jamal Bryant. He was doing an interview with somebody and he said, approximately 42%. He did some research and he said approximately 42% of PKs, a PK is a preacher's kid, basically. He said approximately 42% of PKs have nothing to do with church, don't attend church regularly, are not a part of a church. These are children whose fathers or mothers are pastors, who grew up with the word, who grew up learning the Bible, who grew up in church probably multiple days of the week, who just walk away. You have to ask yourself why that is. Why? 42%. Why? So it's not a matter of you were raised a heathen. No, you were raised right. According to so many, you were raised correctly, but you walk away. And no one is interested in the why. It's not enough people talking about the why. It's not enough people talking about the fact that religious trauma, spiritual abuse is abuse. Literally, it is psychological, emotional, mental abuse. And a lot of people are tired of being abused. In domestic violence, it is a known fact that research shows it often takes a victim up to 7 times to fully leave. 7 times, meaning they go back at least 6 times before they decide, no, I really got to get out of this. Then they figure out a way out. That's even worse. or spiritual abuse. It is hard to leave the God that you've always known, that you fear will damn you to hell if you walk away. It's hard to leave that. So when you see this mother defending the pastor in the church, think about that. It's hard to leave abuse. For those who ain't never been in the shoes of a victim, you wouldn't understand. But it's hard to leave it. And with religious trauma and religious abuse, spiritual abuse, it's hard because you literally believe that you will burn in hell if you alter your beliefs or if you stop believing harmful things or if you question. You literally believe that there is something wrong with you and that the God that you love won't love you. Think about how detrimental that can be. All right, y'all. That's all I got for today. Y'all have a beautiful, wonderful rest of the day, and I will holler at y'all later.